All right, welcome back. For this, all right, welcome back. In this lesson, we'll be treating variables, data types, and basic mathematical operations. So, the last lesson I gave you a tour of most of the user interface of the MATLAB software. So now we'll be creating variables. So, a variable is basically just a container for holding values, a named container for holding values. Variables have two things, just defined by two things. One, the name. Two, the value. So we have a name and a value that makes up a variable. So a name and a value, you assign a value to a name that becomes a variable. So the variable is just like a container, and you put different things. You can put different things in it. You can put let's say it's a numerical variable, a number. So you can put in the number 3, you can put in the number 5, you can put in the number 7, but so you keep updating the value of that variable, right? Just like x could be 3, x could be 5, x could be 7. So x now could have very varying values. X is a variable because its value is never constant. So if it's constant, then it's not a variable. Although in certain programming languages you could create what's called a constant variable, but for our purposes here, just know that a variable can have its values updated. So its value can change. That is why it's called a variable. And the variable is just a container for holding that value. So in order to create a variable, you just, how do I put it, pair up the name and the value, or the name and an expression. So the expression is just something that would evaluate to a value. So you pair them up using the assignment operator. So the assignment operator, what it does is it assigns a value to the variable. So for in this case, this equal to sign is what we call the assignment variable. Not equal to sign. It doesn't mean x is equal to 8, although that is what would happen in this case. What it's saying is assign the value of 8 to the variable x. So the variable x is going to be created when the value 8 is assigned to it. Okay, so you can't have a variable without a value. You can't just have x on its own. MATLAB would not recognize that. So it needs to be that x is assigned the value of 8 for this to be a recognized variable. And if you come over to your workspace here, you'd see the value, you see the variable x, name x, value 8. Okay, so that's our first variable. First variable x equals 8. Now we could have y equals 5, y equals 5, x equals 8. Now, if I were to make, in order to get the value of x, I will just make reference to x. So if I call x on its own, I get 8 returned. If I call y on its own, I get 5 returned. If I did something like x plus y, that would be the same thing as 8 plus 5. Right? If I did x minus y, that would be the same thing as 8 minus 5. So you'd be making reference to the value whenever you call the variable name. Okay, so variables have name and values. In order to get the value, you just have to call the name. And the equal sign is not the equal sign, it's the assignment operator. So it's assigning the value of whatever value to the variable. Okay, so right. Then one other thing is that there are different data types that we use in MATLAB. We won't be going through them here, but I'm just going to give an explanation. So for instance, you were taking, let's say, take for instance, if you did Microsoft Access, you would know what data types are. There are different data types, different types of data, right? So for instance, if you're taking, if you are keeping records of persons, You're keeping records of persons, and this was tabulated you're tabulating it. So there may be different columns or fields. Let's say one was for name, one is for age, one was for height, weight, etc. Is married, right? So under the name under the name column, you would have text data, right? Names would be text. Then if you had age, these would be integers. So integers, you wouldn't have fractional ages because nobody cares if the person is 7.2 or 7.8 years old. All it cares about is whether the person is 7 or 8 or 6. Integral values, that's what integers are. Then if you had height, height would be, well, depending on what unit of measure you're using, height would be fractional. So if you were in meters, for instance, if we're using meters to measure the height, the person could be 4.5, 4.2, person could be 7.6, could be 8 meters, whatever. So there's allowance here for fractional height. If it was weight, person's weight, it would be similar. But if the person had let's say bank balance, right? Bank balance would be decimal. Could be decimal, especially in a bank setting. So 5.9 $5.9 or $5.4422, whatever. If you're keeping track of the fractional part of your currency, you would have to store that value with the fractional part, not just the whole number part. So it wouldn't be integers, you'd also be storing fractions. Then if there was a column called is married, right? So is married, the only values you would have here would be either true or false. So true, yes, he's married, or false, no, he's not married. So you could only have binary values here, true or false, right? So this is also a different type of data type called a Boolean data type. Boolean meaning having only two values, true or false. Binary, right? So these are different data types. It could be text, could be integer, could be fractional. Let me see. Could be Boolean, right? So there are some other data types as well, but we'll just focus on these ones for now. We're not going to go into them right now, but I just want to make it known that these ones exist and there are different types of data. So